or by, you know, by just asking. I mean, it's fine. We're small enough that it's okay. Um, the Fulbright program is, I mean, obviously, it's wonderful. It will give you an opportunity to apply as a senior. I'm assuming that most of you are undergraduate seniors. You can apply in your senior year and then go after you graduate. And that's a very common route to Fulbright, but there are also some other entry points, like you might be in graduate school and you might go to do your research for a master's or a PhD, something like that. But it is, they want you to go to do teaching English or to do graduate study or to do research, whichever grant type you've chosen. But they're also really interested in cultural exchange, and that is the primary mission of Fulbright. So they really want you to get out and be really engaged with your host country. It doesn't have to be somewhere you've been before. It may not even be a country that you know a lot about, although you would want to do some research before your application. But they're really interested in your engagement while you're there. The campus deadline, the way it works is you apply to your campus committee, and our deadline this year is September 9th, which is a week after the Labor Day holiday. So it's a little bit later than we typically do. The deadline for Fulbright, you can see it at the top of the screen there, is October 8th, and that's when I would submit the UK cohort of applications. In between those two dates, we would have an interview for you where we would have some people on campus looking at your application to give you feedback, and then you would have an opportunity to revise and resubmit. And I will also, Emily and I are available to you all during the summer for feedback as well. The goal of the campus review is to help make you a more competitive candidate. We will not be deciding whether or not you go forward. Everyone will go forward in October as part of our cohort. We are trying to help you have the best and strongest application that you can have for your host country. Then in October, it goes forward to the National Fulbright Committee, and in the late fall, it gets reviewed by a series of faculty committees around the country, and they make a decision about who gets referred to the host country. And those are, at that stage, it's a semifinalist. And so you would hear in January whether or not you were a semifinalist. And what that means is that you've been referred on to the host country. And then in the spring, they will make the decision about who to offer grants. And then you would know, hopefully no later than April 15th, if you had received an award offer or not. There are a few countries that are sometimes late, but Fulbright really tries to get them to hold to that April 15th deadline. So what I thought I might do for the moment is we'll pick one of the countries, and Aisha, you said first, I think, so we'll look at Turkey and see what they say. So this is just to give everybody an idea. When you go to the host country, they will tell you what awards that they offer. And so you can see they offer a research award, a master's program award. And then in this open study research category, these are for students who may be going to do graduate study or independent research. And so you can open that up and see. But in this particular case today, we're talking about ETAs. So Turkey, or Turkiye, which I forget. At one point I knew how they had pronounced that, but so this is their description of what they would like to see. And you can see some of it is a little bit, boilerplate, where it's who the Fulbright Commission is, and so they're going to give you some information like that. Not that you don't want to read it carefully, but sometimes that award profile sometimes will be a little bit similar from country to country, although most of them don't have a video. So that's nice that they have a former ETA, or a current one actually, there that you could watch. It tells you the grant length, and so this can vary by country. I think South Korea, for example, might be longer, might be the full year, or no, maybe it's Taiwan. That's a full 12 months. But the grant lengths are often 9 to 10 months, sort of a length of an academic school year. The grant periods can vary. So many of them will start in September. So you would hear in the spring, you would get all your paperwork together and get your visa in the summer and make travel arrangements, and you would go over in September. Now, Laura, you mentioned Brazil, and I'm pretty sure that Brazil is on the opposite academic calendar, and so you would actually be starting in January. So You would be applying in fall 2024, you would hear in spring 2025, and you would actually not go until spring 2026. So some of the countries that are on opposite educational calendars from us, so Australia, I think Brazil is one, I think Argentina is one, there are several, Malaysia, they don't start until that following spring. So you would have like a 6-month gap before you would actually start your grant period. So this is what the host country description will tell you, all of this information. And they talk to you about what their orientation is like. They will send you some videos to watch, and then they will do a week-long in-country orientation, which that's really good for the countries that do that in-country orientation, because you get to know all the Fulbrighters that are there. So that might also be graduate students that are there to do research. It may also be faculty who are there on research or teaching assignments, but you would get to meet all the Fulbrighters in the country for that year, and that can be helpful to you in terms of knowing if there's somebody in your city or town or nearby. They're going to give you some language sessions on culture, a little practice on your teaching methods. And then they do a mid-year meeting where they have everybody come back, and they pay for that too. So they bring you back, and I don't know where they will do that, but in probably a major city, and they will bring everybody from around the country, and you get to meet up with everybody again. So they talk a little bit about the candidate profile that they're looking for. And so one of the things you would want to make sure is you were prepared to serve anywhere, because as you see here, they say you should be prepared to serve in any city across Turkey. This could include very small cities. So it could be that you would be in some locations where if you don't speak Turkish or don't have much Turkish, right, it's a little harder to get by. But they, so that's something to be prepared for. Obviously, you can make it and you will make it. You will get better at Turkish, but you will find people who speak English, but you'll want to be prepared for that. Now, in Spain, if you're looking at Spain, Riley, they have lots of different regions, and I think they allowed you to prioritize your top 3 different regions of Spain because they get a lot of applicants. Again, they have some videos to talk about what it's like. I would definitely look at some of those. I think that's really helpful. I don't know if that's a new feature of the website and more countries are having this, but they didn't used to have this. So you would want to look at the eligibility and make sure, that you fit that. If you're a dual citizen, you're eligible, but you're not eligible, for example, if you got a degree there and then maybe came to the US and are trying to go back. They will take bachelor's or master's level candidates for the ETAs. And then they're going to talk about this. They really would love to have people with a teaching English as a second language credential, but that doesn't mean they would require that. But it looks to me like they're trying to get some people with teaching experience. Now they have 15 awards, and I think it's very unlikely that they would get 15 master's degree candidates with a teaching certificate as English as a second language, 2 or more years of teaching experience, right? That's a lot. And oftentimes people who have that much experience, they can be teaching in a different way. They can already have jobs in the US, or they can have jobs abroad without having to go through Fulbright. So I wouldn't necessarily be put off by this in terms of doing your application. But I think you should think about if they were to get a full pool of that, it looks like that's what they're going to go for. I think that would be unlikely, but you might want to think about, what's your degree in, Aisha?
Political science.
Okay. So I don't think that's a problem. I think political science is fine, but you might want to think about, could I do, maybe I can take a small online course in teaching English as a second language. Maybe I could work for the Writing Center a little bit where I'm working with international students. There are lots of ways to do this, right? Where you could get some practice in working with students who are working in a second language. So you might want to think about that. Then the foreign language proficiency, and this is something everybody should check early on. For example, for Riley, Spain does want you to have at least intermediate. Laura, I think Brazil does want you to have some Spanish or Portuguese, but we'll have to look at that. So they're not going to expect you to have Turkish, but obviously it would be helpful. So we often will say, that it's helpful in this case, where they don't not requiring the language, but it's helpful to have a hospitality level. So it might be helpful for a candidate to have studied enough that you could, ask the location of the bathroom or understand basic words on a menu or be able to offer greetings in that language, or, just know some basic words if you had to get public transportation or something. That can be very, very useful. And they're also going to give you a little language training, but they're also going to give you a very, very limited amount. Obviously, during that orientation meeting, it's only a week long, and they're not going to spend the whole week on language. So I would definitely think that a little bit might be helpful, but they're not requiring it. And then they're going to talk about placement types. And in this particular case, countries can do a variety of things. They can have ETAs at elementary all the way through college. And so that depends on the host country. In this particular case, it will either be in a university or a post-secondary institution. So it could be some kind of vocational, sometimes it's teachers' colleges. So, they will have a range, but just so you know, you will be teaching people that would be approximately your same age group, probably, not younger children. They will want you to assist with extracurricular and those kinds of things. And so it may be that you have a particular talent and you'd be willing to work with the debate team, or you play a musical instrument, and it could be anything. But they would want to find other ways to introduce you to students and help you be involved in that community. And so they're not going to put you in the main capital. They're going to put you out in regional cities. Supplementary project. A lot of times, and this used to be more important, they have a space on the application for you to talk about this, but oftentimes the ETA is not a full-time position. So it can be maybe somewhere from 15 to 25 hours a week. And so they would allow and encourage Fulbright ETAs to have these supplementary projects. Now I notice that more and more countries are having the ETA do 30 or 35 hours, and they're saying you either are not going to be allowed to do a supplementary project, or, for example, this one, you can do a small project as long as it doesn't conflict with your assigned classroom responsibilities. And I think that's because these Fulbright placements have figured out that, going to a country where you may never have been and getting yourself settled and trying to serve as an English instructor, even though you'll be under the supervision of another teacher, but serving as a TA, that's really hard. And even if you're technically only in the school 15 hours a week, you're spending a lot more time than that preparing and traveling to the school and all those kinds of things. So it is not necessary for you to have a supplementary project, but let's say that you have some very strong interest in something in Spain or Turkey or Brazil, maybe literature, or you are a big hiker and you want to join a local hiking club. There could be things like that you would talk about that you would like to do in some of your free time. As you see here, this is true for all Fulbrights. So the stipend is broadly based on the cost of living in the host country. That means it can vary a lot. If you are in Berlin or probably Madrid or some places, or Amsterdam, where the cost of living is much higher, you would get technically a higher amount of funding than, we had a student and we had a Fulbright ETA in Paraguay, or something where the cost of living would be a lot lower. But it's supposed to, in general, support all your costs during that time. So for you to get an apartment, for you to have your meals and be able to buy groceries, for you to have some money if you have to take the bus to work. But it's also, some of it is how you spend on that. I remember we had a student a few years ago who was in Berlin as an ETA. That's why I mentioned that. It's a very expensive city. And he had a really, really nice apartment. And so he was spending basically most of his stipend on his housing, but he chose that apartment. So you could choose a somewhat more modest accommodation, right, and have more funding. So depending on some of the choices you make, you might need a little bit of your own funding, but for the most part, you should not need it. International travel benefits that they offer, which means they're going to send you to the host country and bring you home. And they will offer health insurance. And then, of course, the preparatory course, and that is probably specific to Turkey, and some other countries do that, but not all countries. So, this is something that it's hard for me. Sometimes students will say, well, how much? And obviously here they do have an amount, but please know that these change. And we always say to students, don't go over with no money, $0 in your pocket, have access to funds, because it takes a few weeks to get your bank account set up and for you to get your first amount. And so you don't want to be your first month, you don't have any money, to buy groceries or get new sheets or something, until they start getting you on the payroll and you start getting your payments. So that in general is how you would read for a country. And so with each of the countries that you've selected, you would go and you would read all the way through it for all of those details, because one of the things you want to do is make sure you're eligible. So you wouldn't want to pick a country where they have, let's say, only 2 grants. Some countries do. And they would say, we greatly prefer a master's student with a teaching certificate. Well, it's possible, depending on the country, they're not going to get that many in their pool. I mean, we could talk about that, but it's possible also if they got that, then they might not select you applying as an undergraduate. So you would want to think and make sure that you fit the eligibility, and hopefully they're broad criteria, and you would be fine. So that is something I am available and Emily's available to talk with you about, or for us to listen to you talk about why you think you're a good fit. And we're happy to talk with you about that. Then when you look at the website, and I believe Emily sent you a document and it has the website on it and some information that I'm talking about. But here is where you will start your Fulbright online application. So that is the link. And you will go in and set up an application. You guys have probably done this for many other things you've applied for. You'll set up your own login, your own password, and you'll be able to go in and out of your application until you do your final submission. So, it's something, if you know for sure you're applying, you could start it today. If you're still thinking and doing your research and you're really not sure this is the right opportunity for you, you can wait a month or 2 months or whatever. So that is where you're actually start the application. But here is some information about application components. And I want to show this just so that you have an idea of what is in the application and what you would be looking at. So when they talk about biographical data, that's your name and education and all those kind of things. And this is going to be part of the online application, the program information, which host country, your abstract. Everyone for all Fulbrights do a statement of grant purpose. For the ETA, it is 1 page. And I think they tell you specifically, the font, 1-inch margins. I mean, they're pretty specific about how they want it laid out. So you can see that. But what they want in this for you as an ETA for the host country, they want you to talk about why will you be good as an ETA. So you want to talk about why you're interested in that country, but also what is the training that you would bring? How would you be good at this? You don't have to have a teaching credential in most places. You don't have to have a lot of teaching experience, but you may have what we call transferable skills or teaching-like skills. So you may have worked in summer camp, you may have done tutoring, you may have worked for the writing center, you may have been a TA for classes here, or you were a UK 101 instructor, or I'm sure there are any number of things that I'm missing, that would be very good and to help other people learn English, that you could translate that skill into teaching, serving as a teaching assistant. And also for some of you, if you don't feel like you have a lot of experience, you still have time to get some. This summer, you might consider doing some volunteer work. I always mention to students the Carnegie Center downtown. The Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning does tutoring work with young people in elementary and middle schools around town. And they have a lot of UK students who volunteer there, and they only require 1 hour a week. to work with a young person. And they even have some opportunities in the summer. So you could do that and you could gain some experience in next fall. Or you may have other kinds of things. We can talk about those, but you probably have a variety of experiences that would be great for this, even if they're not specific in a classroom teaching. So this is where you're going to want to talk about. You're going to want to help them understand that you would be good at that you would adapt well, that you would, be used to the challenges. Maybe you have worked with students this age and a variety of other capacities. You wouldn't have to talk about working with very young people if, you're applying for a country where you're basically going to be working with same age. On the other hand, if you're applying for a country, we had an ETA in Taiwan a couple of years ago, and in fact, currently, and they're working with very, very young children, so like second, third grade kind of. And so it would be helpful to talk about how, as you might serve as an ETA, it would be very different, right, in those two age groups. So this is where you're going to talk a lot about why you think you'd be a good ETA and why you want to do it there. And then they have some information about don't make it location specific unless that country tells you to. Like Spain, for example, allows you to choose the 3 regions. But for the most part, one of the things is when you apply to a Fulbright host country, be it Brazil, be it Turkey, being Spain, you are going to go where they send you, right? So that could be a small rural town, it could be a large city, and it can really range. And then there's the format. Now, the personal statement, this is also common to every single Fulbright application. And it is 1 page, and it is 1 page for everyone. So regardless of the type of grant that you apply for. One thing I want to say to this, I think this is a little bit hard. I want to say this up front. The way they describe this, and it says it should detail your personal history, family background. And I think that's a confusing way to start, because then you think you're supposed to say, well, I grew up in this town, and when I was in middle school, I did this or whatever. That's really not what they want, right? I mean, this personal statement is a way that you introduce yourself. You're going to get an interview with several of us on campus, maybe Emily and I, and probably others, and we will get to talk to you about your application and what your plans are. When you go to the next stage, it will strictly be paper review. So you want to have a personal statement that helps them get to know you a little better, what your skills are, what your interests are. Maybe you tell an anecdote about a particular experience you had with traveling and how something went wrong and you were resilient and you solved the problem. Or maybe you tell a funny story. It can be a variety of things, but you want them to come away from that statement saying, oh, I know a little bit more about Laura and why she would be good. And she's obviously likes to be involved with lots of groups of people, and that's great for Fulbright, right? Because you're serving as kind of a quasi-ambassador for the US, right, while you're there. So Fulbright personal statements can be very, very different. We can share one with you. You can find lots online. I mean, they can look very different from one another. There is no one model of what you have to do or what you have to include, but they also don't need you to tell lots of stories about your grandparents, or sometimes people spend too much time on that. They really want to get to know you more than they want to know like the stories from your growing up necessarily. They will want you perhaps to talk in your personal statement about what you want to do in the future. And you don't have to be planning to be a teacher. So it's okay to say, I want to do a Fulbright year and teach. I'm really interested in this host country, but I'm going to come back and go to law school or graduate school or into working in industry or whatever. That is fine. So it's okay to have whatever career path you have. If you are in a host country that is going to require a language requirement. So Riley, if you applied for Spain, Riley would have to do this. She would do a self-language evaluation form, and she would also need to have it evaluated by a language evaluator. And the Hispanic Studies here at UK is very familiar with this, and they do it regularly, and you would contact the department, and they would do a language evaluation and fill out the form for you. You may also have a high school instructor that taught you in Spanish that could do it. There can be a range of people who can do this. And then for your recommendations. Now, this is a little bit different for you guys than for other, and you can see they've added a lot of language about it. You can even go and look at the form. They will have somewhere on here, they have a link to the actual form. It's a series of questions. I don't know, I can't find it right at the moment, but somewhere here. But you can, yes, so it's not a written letter for the ETA, it's a form. And it's 4 questions, or it was last year. So it doesn't have to be faculty in your case. Maybe you had someone who supervised you at the summer camp you worked with, and you think they would be a great person to talk about your skills and what you did. Well, that's fine, right? Maybe it will also be one of your faculty members or somebody who advised the student group that you're very involved in. You know, it can be a lot of people. You wanting them to talk about what skill set you bring, and also the other qualities that you bring, the way you work with people, or your creativity, or your ability to react quickly in a changing circumstance. So you want people to be able to comment on that. And
Pat,
so,
can we pause? We have somebody that wants to ask a question in the
oh, I would
chat.
love that. Yes,
And
I keep going on. I'm sorry.
I just want to let you all know, for some reason, my chat is not telling me when we have a chat. So if you have a question, by all means, feel free to
Oh, it looks like they
unmute
are
and
something in the chat.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's acting odd. So go ahead.
Yeah, so sorry. I didn't want to just interrupt. So I know for Turkey, because I was actually looking at this website earlier, I was a little bit like confused because it said like in the award benefits, they give you like English teaching courses, I think is what it like, I don't remember their exact language for it, but they also would like you to already have some. So is that like, I don't know. I feel like that, I don't know. You get what I'm saying? I feel like that's kind of like, how many countries do you think normally kind of require the already having the experience? 'Cause I really don't have
Well,
any
it
teaching
used to not be
anything.
any. I think when I first started working with this, there would, I mean, you just didn't see that. We're seeing it more
Mhm.
and more, that they would like a little teaching experience, and probably because it's helpful to these countries, right? Somebody who comes in with a little bit of experience and they've been in a classroom or some type of teaching setting, they adapt more quickly. Like, so you can
Right.
see why the host country would like it, but that doesn't mean they don't take a lot of Fulbrighters that have no teaching experience. So they're asking for you to have some, but like I said, that can come in a lot of formats. They're also going to give you some basics. Like if we go back to Turkey, if we go back to the um, host countries, let me move my screen. This course they will offer you is going to be pretty rough and ready, right? And short, because I'm assuming they're going to offer it in the orientation time.
Okay.
And like they said, that's only a week.
Okay.
So you will attend this week-long orientation. It will have a variety of activities, including a set, right, English teaching. So they're going to give you a day, an afternoon, you know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
it's not going to be a lot. So they're going to talk to you there. It may be some things about this is a good practice, they will give you some basics. They will talk to you about sort of what the school system is like there. Like in some countries, schools are very formal. And so the teacher has a very much that sage on the stage role. You're not expected to engage in friendly banter, for example, with the students in some host countries. The US, by contrast, is often very casual, right? Compared to a lot of host countries, can be more casual in the classroom. And so you would want to know things like that, and they would help you understand, so that you could meet those cultural expectations.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah,
Yeah,
I wasn't thinking about the duration of the course because I was like, well, if they offer courses, I was like, why would they require you to already have that if they're going to offer it to you? So that makes a lot more sense, actually.
I think it is Taiwan, which is where they have this year-long, and they do offer a foreign language training, second language training course for theirs, and it's much longer, and they pay for it. But it's
Okay.
because you're there longer, right? And it's considered a full-time experience. So it's different country by country. But in this case, in Turkey, it's going to be really brief. So
Okay.
you wouldn't want to rely on that as your sole introduction.
Okay. And then I have one more quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
So
please.
are certain countries more competitive than others? Like I assume like the UK is really, I don't even know if they have the like United Kingdom on for the ETA, but
They
I know
don't.
for like the study ones at least, like the UK
Right.
is so popular. So
Right.
for the ETA, are there any countries that are like super hard to get into, like harder than others?
Well, Riley wants to apply to Spain, and that is very popular.
Okay.
Now, they have a lot of grants. Spain has a lot of grants. And so we have certainly had UK students there. But they also get a huge number of applications. So see, they have 168.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Mhm.
No, but they get a huge number of applicants as well. So, you know, so it's considered competitive, even though they have that many grants. You know, you would think they would have one for everybody, but no, there are a lot of people applying. So, a lot of the European countries, right, would be are just going to get more applications because more students are going to feel like they're more familiar with Europe, or some of these countries are more English speaking, and so they might feel like that's a better fit for them. And some countries, for example, have much stronger language requirements that some students won't have, you know, and so they will want, in the case of some of these countries, they'll want you to have a little Russian. I don't know that Kazakhstan does, but they'll want, so they'll say novice, which novice is usually a year or less, oftentimes less actually. So for language lessons, you know, Russian or Kazakh. Well, some students have Russian because we teach Russian here, but it would be less common, I think, for us to have a student who speaks Kazakh, right? That would be less
Right.
common.
Right.
In the Middle East, you know, they're going to want a certain amount of Arabic in a lot of these countries. And we do have students who study Arabic and speak some Arabic, but we maybe not have as many, you know.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
Mhm.
Riley, do you have any questions? I'm sorry, I'm just droning on, and I want to make sure that I get at the things y'all are interested in.
Yes, I have a question about the when you're applying for Spain, because I saw they have a lot of different awards, like you said, in the different regions, but also like different age groups. And I was wondering if you include that in your application as well, like what age group you would want to teach, or if it's just randomly assigned.
You can, if it's a country like maybe Spain, where they do have a range. You can talk about, I think I'm best placed, you know, to work with younger people because I have all this experience working with children, or I've done a lot of teaching at the college level and TAing, so I think I'd be really great. If it's a country that says, we're going to place you in a teacher's college or a vocational college, then there's no point in talking about how great you are with kids, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah. So you really will want to speak to the, you know, that particular country's description. Oh, I thought I had Spain pulled up a minute ago and then I got, but so you can see, Riley, the reason I picked Turkey over Spain is Spain goes on and on and on and on and on. Oh, I guess maybe everybody's doing these videos now. And they have a lot of information because they have so many different regions. So there's just a lot. So it's harder to go through in an you know, a session like this. But Spain would have a variety of levels. You know, some of them are at the UN. These American spaces are like these language training centers, and a lot of different ages could come in there. You know, so they have a lot of different types of grants, lots of different places where you can be, whereas that would be less true in some other countries. Did that get the questions for now? I mean, did I get the question?
Yes, I also have a question about since I'm graduating in May, like would I still be able to ask you guys for advice on my application?
Absolutely. Yes, we
Okay.
work with, I mean, you can apply if you want at large, but I actually encourage students who we've already met and talked to, it is to your benefit to go through the university system just because you get a lot more advice, right? And we can help you a lot more and work with you. So we absolutely have alumni in our cohort every year, and delighted to have you. So you would just want to make sure that you know, you're graduating knowing that you're applying in the fall, but that you know, you have something that you're doing for the year in between. And it might be that you know, it's something that is going to be very useful to Fulbright, you know, that you're working in a nonprofit, or you're teaching with AmeriCorps, or you're doing something like that. And so even though you might not have even started that, when you applied for Fulbright, or you're just beginning it or something, you could talk about the skill set that you would be bringing during the application year.
Thank you.
So I had basically completed going through the application, and that's just what I wanted you to see, that there are these different components. So it seems like a lot, but really those two statements are very, very critical. And we're willing to give you a lot of feedback on that. I know that personal statements can be really hard. It's hard to know where to start, and we call them a personal statement, but then I say, don't give a lot of family information. So it's like, well, how personal do you want it to be? And really that is up to you too. Sometimes a student might have had an experience in their background that, was very hard, and they don't want to talk about it. You don't have to give up information for Fulbright. I mean, you don't have to tell them things like that, but other students have something that they want to share because they're really proud of overcoming that, and in general, we tell students to focus on, it's the overcoming, and it's what you did with the information or what you did with the event. It's not the event itself that's the important thing, right? It's how you learned, how you grew, how you changed, that you would want to be focusing on. But we know these statements are hard, and that's why I also encourage you not to wait too late. Sometimes if students wait until August to start working on their application, it doesn't give them much time to really think through and have time to let it gestate, and then, sit for a few weeks and come back and work on it again. Fulbrights will benefit from several rounds of review and revision often, because you'll become more concrete. And these statements are so short, you don't really have room for a lot of filler information. You're going to want to be very concrete about why you want to go there and what the skill set you bring and what you hope to gain from it. But you're not going to have, it doesn't help you if your statement is overly broad or vague, because the reviewers they want to try to get to know you. So the more specific, the better, really. Other things that I should mention, Emily, that I haven't mentioned?
I was going to say, we are planning, hopefully over the summer, to kind of have just some like check-in, meetings throughout the summer for students that are planning to apply for these types of awards, that the deadlines are early in the fall. So if either of you are interested in doing that, let us know. It's not going to be anything, we're not going to have assignments or anything like that. It's not going to be anything super formal, but just kind of touching base with you throughout the summer to kind of make sure that this is staying in your mind. So if you're sure you're going to apply in the fall, definitely let us know if you might be interested in that. We'd love to have you as part of that group.
And even if you're not entirely sure, but you want to stay with it for the, first part of the summer, we're okay with that too. I mean, Emily and I know plans changed, and we understand that, but just let us know, if you start an application and then something happens and you feel like you can't finish it, it's really okay to tell us that. We're not going to be angry or anything, right? We realize you're in the process of planning and you don't know all the opportunities that might be available to you right now.